Hi guys, Jagelsdorf here, back again with another video, and this time we're making another themed piece of terrain and we are going to make some nice totems for our orcs. So, without any further ado, check it out. So, as you all know, I rarely do this, but this time I again took some time to prepare myself a little bit and plan things out. I decided that I want to make some Native American inspired totems, but with a more cartoony, wacky, orky feel. So I decided that each level is going to represent some sort of a characteristic orky totem. So we have a squeak on the one side on the bottom, then an orc holding two axes and then a small goblin on top. And here on the other side I just drew a skull, which is also a very orky symbol. And then of course the gaping toothy maw of some kind of an orc berserker. And there are going to be more that I kind of made up on the spot, like a troll or a orc in a helmet. Now, to base our totem on, we are going to need a dowel or a pole of some sort. And for my project I decided to use the product that is so sought after in this corona-ridden time. I used the inner cardboard tube of the TP roll, cut it in half in two halves, and then rolled it into two smaller dowels. Then I used some masking tape to hold it together in a few points, but they were still very flimsy, and so that we can sculpt easier on them and so that they can withstand more abuse, I decided to do something about it. I filled them with hot glue on one side to weigh them down a little bit, and after that filled them with paper held together with some PVA glue. And I really stuffed them really hard using a tool to compact it really hard together. And after the glue has dried, they really do feel like solid wood or something. And this is a good material to sculpt on. And for the sculpture I'll be using some paper mache air drying clay. That's the stuff that you've already seen in my other builds, but you can really use any air drying clay of your choice. I'm starting with a squeak, and the most characteristic thing of a squeak is its great gaping maw with nice teeth. So I'm making this semicircle with my needle and then simply little triangles for the mouth. The eyes are also very simply made, really comic-like, and then two little holes for the nose. I wanted to give it a little bit more stability as it's the bottom piece, and also I wanted to make it look a little bit more interesting, so I'm sculpting these little hoppy legs that will stick on the sides. And it's a really simple shape that I'm going to make a little bit more interesting by pushing in some toes. And to finish it off, a little triangle piece of clay as a nice squeaky tail. And remember to blend it in with a wet finger or with a tool, and then I add some little texture on the back. As the squeak dries, I'm starting on another totem pole. This one is going to be the skull. I'm going to start with the basic shape of the skull with the cheekbones and what's going to be the teeth. And I'm also pushing down the clay underneath the cheekbones to make them a little bit more pronounced. And for the teeth I simply push in a few square shapes into the lower part of the skull. And the skull is again a really simple shape. The nose is again just 2 points. I made one eye with the back of a pen, and the other eye I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting and orky. So again I'm making this kind of winking or squinting triangle eye, just as with the squeak. After that I wanted to distinguish the skull from the rest of the totem pole, so to say. So just underneath the cheekbones I'm pulling a line just to give it some delineation. And again, to give it a little bit more detail, I'm pushing in these little streaks on the temples and on the back of the head. Now here are some other totems that I sculpted before, and I feel like it's really good to sculpt this in steps. So first do one part of your totem, wait until it dries, and then start with the next part so that you don't destroy what you've already done. Anyway, I'm going to take one of the already dried squigs and sculpt my orc on top. As you see, the eyes and nose are again just simple lines pushed in with the needle, and making a, comic sculpture like this, you really need to find a few characteristic thing about a particular figure and concentrate on them. And GW orcs have these really small foreheads, squinty eyes, small noses, and then big mouths with giant teeth. So that's what I'm kind of exaggerating over here. Anyway, next step for our sitting orc are two knees, again 2 triangles poking out a little bit. I'm not going to do the feet, just the knees are going to be enough to indicate this sitting or kneeling position. And again, I'm pulling a line to differentiate between the trouser and then the shirt, so to say, and after that I'm also going to pull another line to show where the head itself is. The axes are simply made with these 2 kind of triangle or trapezoid shapes, complemented by some thinner strands of papier-mâché clay. Simply roll it until you get a thin strip. And then the hands holding the axes are made basically the same as the axe heads, only that I wrapped it around the handles and then push in some little fingers. As I said, I'm marking where the head is, and the very last step for our little orc are the ears. Again, we're working with triangles. Simply put 2 little blobs onto sides of your orc head and try to push them into triangle shape, and you can also make a little line on them, to indicate the structure of the ear as it is. And I opted for small ears for my orcs, as big ears is something that's more characteristic for example, a goblin, which we're going to sculpt now. I made the eyes again with my pen because I thought they look like, really scared Gretchen eyes. Then I'm rolling a little cone flatter on one side to make a big goblin nose that I'm also blending in a little bit with my tool and a wet finger. And under the nose I decided to make a scared little mouth by making this zigzag pattern. If you've watched any cartoons, you know what I mean. And then I wanted my goblin to kind of hold on to my orc, so I made these little paws. And at last, giant goblin ears, 2 big triangles that I'm simply going to tack on both sides. And there's one thing I would advise you to do with ears that big, and namely to use some armature. I had some problems with these ears and some horns on my other orc, so this time for this sculpture I'm going to use some copper wire, glue it with super glue to my paper dowel and build my ears on top. And as you see, I'm simply sliding them on, and then I can cut and sculpt them. And over here we're going to make a troll. So if you look at GW models of trolls, they always have these giant and droopy features, droopy ears and a big droopy nose, big droopy lip. So that's what we are going to try and emulate. After the ears, we're going to go with these thin orky eyes as well. They look really menacing, which fits a troll. Again, giant big teeth. But instead of going for the small orky nose, we're going to make him a giant potato. And for this giant droopy nose, this giant potato, I'm basically making a little semicircle that I'm going to fit on the sculpture to look like I want it to do. Make it a little bit more tapered, then blend it in with the rest of the face. And I still thought that the nose didn't look quite as I wanted to do, So I put two little balls on the side and then desperately tried to make it not look like something very phallic. But I think in the end I succeeded. Now there was still one thing missing from my troll, and all the trolls in basically all the media always have some kind of bad skin condition. And so that's what we're making here. A few rolled balls of your clay simply scattered here and there on the troll's face. And here are all of our totems. As you see, a varied selection of orcs, goblins, squigs and other things. But we still have a little problem, and namely that they aren't too stable. I tried to battle it in a few ways. First I sanded down the bottoms of the totems, then I decided to weigh them down with some screws, but it all still didn't help. So I decided to lay this aside for a moment, do the painting and take care of it after they are painted. So I started with a nice black undercoat and then decided to lay on my base colors in many thin coats. I'd prefer to do one thick coat, but sadly the paints that I used for this project were kinda crappy. Anyway, first white. You want to paint all your skulls white, all your teeth white, and basically that's it. The orcs, of course, nice bright green, and then all the red accents. I decided to make the mouths red instead of black to give it more color again. And of course the squigs. The squigs really need to be painted this classic red. It makes them look so jumpy. I mean, red is so perfect for squigs that you can't possibly use any other color. And as I said, I didn't want to get too fancy with a paint job. This is supposed to be a savage, orky totem. So the horns are a simple yellow. And after that I'm using yellow basically anywhere where I think like we need some more visual variation. So the trousers on the sitting orc, and then some random accents on one of the other totems. And the same with blue. I used blue simply to give my totems a little bit more variation in color. And then of course the troll can't be any other color than blue. Well, it could be green, but again, we already have so much green on these totems that I made this troll exactly because I wanted to paint it blue. And at this point they look really cool, really bright, but sadly that's not what we want for Mordheim. So we are going to make a few layers of washes. First a thin coat of a black wash, and then a thorough coating of a brown wash. However, my brown wash was really thinned down and I really wasn't satisfied with how it looked like at this point. So a little bit later down the line I'm going to correct this a little bit. Anyway, cover them in as many layers of black, brown or green wash as you see fit, and simply do it until you feel like they look like they're supposed to. Now, to make them pop a little bit more, I'm going to dry brush them, and I'm using the respective base color with a little bit of white added to it to give them this worn kind of sun bleached look, or a little bit like stone that has chipped off. And yeah, I'm simply having fun with it, trying to make them pop more, to make them at the same time really grimdark and Mordheimy and very orky and colorful, which isn't that easy. Anyway, after I dry brushed all of it with a base color, I decided to dry brush it with white again to give it this sun bleach look or chipped stone look, and to give it a little bit more highlight. So that's why I'm mostly dry brushing from top to down. And as I said before, I wasn't really happy with my brown wash, so I mixed up a stronger batch and put some more wash onto the totems to make them more dirty and grimy. And I didn't cover the entire totem, only a few splotches here and there. And at this point I finally decided what I want to do to make them more stable, and I found some 5-cent coins and simply glued them down to the bottom. Simple and easy. Now, the totems were still a little bit too bleak, So I decided to amp up the contrast with some black outlines, and here you can see comparing one totem that's already painted and one that isn't, and it makes a whole world of difference. And yeah, it's up to you to decide if they came out okay or not. I'm really happy with them, and I would really like to do more of this kind of very colorful stuff. So before I talked about the builds in the outro, there's one thing that I want to address, and namely I looked into the statistics of my channel and I've seen that only about 1/3 of you actually subscribe. So if you watch my channel and like what I do, why don't you just click subscribe and let's bring this number up to some rookie numbers. So yeah, if you want to see more, definitely subscribe, especially now as the upload schedule is probably not going to be as regular as it used to be before. So to be updated, click that subscribe button, click that bell icon. Now back to my totems. I have to say they were really inspired by one particular person in the community, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but they were really inspired by Frankie the Crafter, who does some awesome stuff with air drying clay and uses this really bright colors and great palette, and I really strive to do something like this one time, but for now I'm doing Mordheim, which is drab, which is burned down, which is destroyed. So even though I really liked how cartoony these totem looked, I really had to douse them in washes and then dry brush the crap out of them just to bring this nice popping color down a little bit. But thankfully the black outline made them pop a little bit more again. I'm not sure what I'm going to do as my next project for my themed terrain. Very likely some tents or orky barricades to match the tents, or maybe something chaos related. I don't know yet. Definitely leave a comment down below if you have any idea what I should do next. And in the meantime, I have a few projects down the pipeline. If you follow me on Instagram, you can see some sneak peeks of what's coming. So yeah, check me out on Instagram as well. And yeah, that's basically it for the video. I hope you liked it and I hope I'll see you again. Bye!